everybody. I am so happy to see you all here. I am the lady with the keys, which makes me the principal. That's usually how it goes. The person with the most keys can open the most doors, right? My name is Petra Callan, and this is my 4th year here. And I feel really blessed to have been able to join this community, and I look forward to being here for a long time. It is a really special cluster, and it is not often that we get to come together to have conversations about not only the health and well-being of one school, but the health and well-being of all the schools in the community. For us, that can really be a challenge. As you know, we're a little spread out. So when you look at the map, we look like the 82nd corridor. And I MapQuested it once, and I'm probably wrong, but I thought MapQuest told me it was about an 8-mile span. So that can be challenging to get folks together. So I really appreciate you taking the time. Because as you know, now we're starting to have conversations in the whole district about what boundaries look like. And we are concerned about how things will end up looking for us so we can continue to grow our programs in schools and be healthy and vibrant. I will be here, of course, the whole time to answer questions, and at some point I can talk a little bit for people who are interested about learning more about what we are offering to be the kind of high school that anybody would want to send their children to. But the primary part of this conversation is really everybody being able to talk about what's important to you at your various places. We're lucky that we're not cutting FT, so we're actually growing our programs. I'm looking to hire, so if anybody knows anybody, someone, engineering teacher, computer science teacher. So those are really exciting additions, and I should see the number of students forecasting for those classes. So I think they're going to be a little popular. We'll continue to be able to offer our art classes, our music classes, language, and so we are offering more all the time, and we're really excited about that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce Brian Repp. He's the PTSA president here, and his son is a sophomore and come most recently from Roseway Heights. So I'd like to welcome him, and thank you all for being here.
Okay. Thanks, Petra. We're so stoked to have Petra as our principal. Thanks everybody for coming. I hope this is the first of a series of meetings with all of the feeders, so that we can get to know each other, and so that we can sort of get our act together and start acting in a unified way with respect to things going on at the district level. Along those lines, the next PTA meeting is on Monday the 14th, and at that meeting, Judy Brennan from PPS, who is head of enrollment and transfer, she will be talking about this district-wide boundary review project that we're kind of talking about tonight. But she'll be talking about it in a bit more detail, and that'll be an opportunity for not only Madison parents, but feeder parents, community members, anyone who wants to come to ask Judy questions and really sort of dig into that whole process. It's a big process. I think all told, 2.5 years, maybe even 3 years. We're kind of right smack dab in the middle of it. We're here tonight for 3 basic reasons. Number one, as I mentioned, we want to bring all the feeders together with Madison, get to know each other. We want to, first of all, get the feeders up to speed on where Madison, or what Madison's point of view on this whole boundary review project is, the enrollment and boundary related concerns that we have, and what we would like to see come out of this process for Madison. Probably the biggest part of tonight's meeting will be dedicated to, I'm going to kind of blaze through the Madison part so that we can really spend as much time as possible on the feeder stories, so that the Madison folks and all the feeders have a better understanding of what's going on at Harrison Park, what's going on at Jason Lee, broadly speaking, but more specifically as as these concerns issues relate to enrollment and boundaries. That's the project at hand. And then finally, one of the things we've been asked to do, that is the sort of MAD parents group, Madison Parents, is to serve as a mouthpiece for the Madison cluster. And so we've been asked to get back to PPS and the PSU team that they're working with about what is the best way to interact with Jason Lee, what is the best way to interact with Harrison Park, et cetera. So that's another thing we want to discover. Did you have your hand up? So I may have covered most of this already. And as I said, Judy Brennan's here, so she can correct me where I have something wrong. Obviously, Patricia as well. Any parent, if they need to correct me. And of course, at the end, we'll want to have some sort of spell out some concrete next steps, so we know what's next and what we can expect, when we can expect to see each other doing so. So real quickly, this is the district-wide boundary review project as I understand it. A timeline of the project is to follow. But this is some of the language pulled from Portland Public Schools rationalizing the project, why we're doing this. They're talking about right-sizing schools, so you don't have one school that's over-enrolled, another school that's under-enrolled. They're talking about taking a more holistic, comprehensive approach. Over the years, naturally, over-enrollment, under-enrollment, these things are sort of addressed piecemeal, and sometimes these piecemeal solutions can cause bigger problems down the road. So PPS has wisely a couple years ago said, we need to look at this, look at the big picture, and try to come up with a comprehensive solution that is sustainable over the long haul. Maybe even building in periodic reviews of the new policies so that they can be adjusted as necessary. And then finally, this quote from Carol Smith at the bottom, just wanting to emphasize that they want to take a sensible approach that is sustainable and an approach that really helps all kids. Addressing inequities is sort of the underlying theme for a lot of this as well. And so you'll see that pop up again and again tonight. Here's the timeline. As Judy pointed out a little bit ago, this was sort of the ideal timeline that was proposed in November. I think we're a little behind this now, but in a nutshell, we're in the discovery phase right now, kind of the now and the spring, early summer. For those of you who don't know, PPS contracted with a group at PSU. I think they're called the Policy Consensus Institute, something like that. Center for Public Service, thank you. And this team has been tasked with helping the district basically understand the best ways to interface with different communities, the best way to gather intel, understand what's ailing communities, what's working, and so on. So that sort of detective team is what I'm referring to when I'm talking about PSU. The Madison Parents Group met with Wendy Wellis from that group about a month ago. And as I mentioned before, one of her big questions was, she was definitely interested to hear what some of our concerns was, but at a higher level, she was like, again, we're sort of, she says, we're going through you, Madison, but how do we talk to the feeders, and does it make sense to maybe talk to the feeders separately, and so on and so forth. So that's a lot of what we want to try to figure out tonight is it practical for Madison to try to represent this range of issues and concerns that the feeders may have, or does it make more sense for Madison to sort of focus on its Madison-oriented picture while some of the feeders interface directly with the district? Analysis happens over summer. In the fall is when the first, or maybe this has been pushed out a little bit, but as it stands now, the fall is when the first proposed boundary revisions see the light of day. I imagine these are going to get beat up a fair amount. And then this will happen over the course of some months, and then ultimately in the winter of this year and early next year is when the final boundary map gets presented to the board for approval. I understand that one of the reasons that PPS is reaching out to the communities is obviously to do a good job of understanding what's needed, what the problems are that need to be addressed. But also I think they need to shore up their case, sort of root it in real community intelligence so that they can sell it and rationalize it successfully to the board, because after all the board is a political body and they have to vote on it, ultimately approve it. And then finally, 2015 school year is when the new boundaries and some attendant policies will be implemented. So we're about a year and a half out, and it'll fly by. I imagine, especially as the fireworks start in fall and winter this year. All right, so before we start grilling the feeders, just want to provide a quick overview of where Madison is coming from on all this. In a nutshell, you can kind of reduce it to enrollment. Madison is a bit shy of where it needs to be sort of sustainably vital, to attract CTE dollars, to have a robust program, as robust a program as it could have. So we're hovering somewhere around 1,000 and change.
About 1040 right now.
1040. And we want to get to that 1,350, maybe even 1,400. We lose too many kids for various reasons, and we'll get into some of that in a minute. And we want these kids back. We need them back to be healthy. There is Madison's point of view is that there is an unfortunate history of feeling a bit neglected out here on the east side. This meeting and subsequent meetings hopefully will change that. I think, in fairness to the district, I think we have made it a little easy for them over the years to maybe disregard is too strong a word, but not pay as close attention to what we need and want as they could, because we've been fairly quiet. Certainly not talking as a cohesive, sort of unified voice that they cannot ignore. So that's another reason that we're here tonight, and hopefully together again for the subsequent meeting. So let's get into some of the details here. Madison, all told, has 9 feeder schools. That includes Wrigler, which is a K-5 that comes to Madison through Beaumont. It also includes Creative Sciences, which is a focus program. But that's a lot of feeders. I think another statistic is that freshmen from Madison come from like 27 different schools or something like that. I don't know how unusual that is. Is that unusual for Portland high schools?
Well, it depends on what part of town the high school is in. On the west side, there's fewer places that students are coming from, but here we have a lot of feeders, and there are also schools that, or families that transfer students from Madison feeders to other schools for maybe immersion programs or whatever it might be. And so this year, we're trying to collect forecasting sheets from 27 different places. So there might be 2 kids over here and 4 kids over there. And what that does is it ends up reducing that sort of feeling of Madison community, because if students are over at Mount Tabor, they are really identifying with the Franklin neighborhood, because that is a Franklin feeder, and so that can be a real challenge.
Yes, sir.
Do these population numbers include special ed or not?
In terms of how many students we have?
Yes.
Yes.
And so you would be collecting special ed numbers as well? I mean, so you say 27 different schools.
Yeah. I mean, that's, when we're looking at our incoming freshman class, that's how many different middle or K schools I counted.
That's a lot of schools to knit together, and it's that same point is reinforced by this kind of crazy boundary we have that stretches up and over Grant towards Jefferson and way down the 82nd corridor. I think for obvious reasons, it doesn't lend itself to building a sort of cohesive sense of identity around Madison. And it's also on a practical level, we're asking a lot of kids who have enough challenges already to travel a long way. And then when you get into evening activities, sports, and it just kind of gets ridiculous. And you see this particularly when you, and I know Madison's not unique in this regard, but when you driving down 82nd at 9 o'clock on a school night, you see a cluster of high school kids huddled under the TriMet shelter, waiting to travel, God knows how far, 5 miles down 82nd to go home. I skipped the point about the lack of a middle school. I believe Madison is the only Portland high school without a dedicated middle school. Lack of focus programs. Focus programs seem to be concentrated elsewhere, and they seem to sort of bleed kids away to other high schools because that's where the focus programs sort of feed into or end up. That is changing. Spanish immersion starts fall of this year, and we hope to get a continuation of the new Vietnamese immersion that's at Roseman now into Madison as well. But by and large, I think we could see big improvements there. Continuing on, we all have a lot of stories about people borrowing addresses to give into other high schools. Apparently these numbers are pretty big because everyone knows of at least 6 examples. That's the problem. Athletics, of course, is a whole nother ball of wax. But just to cite two concerns, we're all going to be competing at the 6A, we're talking about a recipe to kind of continue demoralizing kids who get trounced by these big, powerful schools. We want more kids so that we can field better teams. And also, it's a money issue. We want and need more kids to pay for the kinds of equipment and amenities that all schools can afford. And again, I recognize that Madison is not unique in this regard, but certainly we have that problem. And then this last point about this first of all, planned expansions at Grant Franklin encourage students to encourage transfers. When the Mad Parents group heard about these expansions at Grant and Franklin particularly, I know Roosevelt's in there too, it was really startling because we have capacity. And these schools, these are our neighboring schools. And the obvious sort of reaction was, well, why aren't we getting some of these kids? I won't even get into the use of $10 million. I know, Mary, you may have some things to say about that. But just in terms of bleeding off kids, when we're sitting here in need of more kids, that seemed like a little obvious disconnect.
Can I ask, what was the logic for doing that? What was the reason it was getting
For expanding those 3.
and not addressing Madison's issue?
There was no reason.
They should just make it bigger.
Well, I would say that if Portland's only building schools once every 100 to 125 years, but the concern I had was that it was a large chunk of reserves going into 2 buildings, and so now you're already hearing Roosevelt's concern that their expansion is not including enough room for certain programs, so it's.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about money here. This seems pretty straightforward that, people have got to be asking themselves the same questions.
Are there some population projections?
It was a head scratcher for sure. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if you look at the population projections going forward, I think we're headed probably towards an average of 1,800 at my school, or even 2,000 going forward.
Then why do they call commercial? I mean, that's. It really begs the question.
Well, it's the difference
And when will they
between,
reopen that?
that's a whole other thing. But the long-term projections for, DOSU gets maligned all the time because of the neighborhood stuff, but they are the first to say, hey, the neighborhood projections aren't accurate, the district asks for it. They're not predictably accurate. But the district level, they've been fairly close on their projections. And so I think long term, we're going to see some decent growth going forward. And particularly if we do a better job of not sending kids to alternative schools, we'll have a lot of kids in our high schools. The immediate thing was both Franklin and Grant would be over 1,500 kids when their new buildings open. And so it's either do a boundary change or expand. And the school board said we'd rather expand to do a boundary change.
I didn't hear that when I went to the district. They didn't, because they're still going forward with the boundary review stuff. When the email that I got back was not about that at all. It simply mentioned, that it was a good deal, that they could save money on the building costs by going in by expanding, and that it kind of was more benefit than what kind of thing. The response I got was purely about saving money and getting more benefit out for the development versus anything about not wanting to change boundaries.
Yes, I am terribly sorry that I came late, but I work in Salem, I commute up here, I pick my kids up. So I am a little bit off. So what I'm interpreting is that the new buildings, it seems as though more money is being allocated to making these high schools larger so that they can accommodate more students versus, or the debate is whether or not to change boundaries or make the schools larger. Is that what's going on with this new remodel?
It's not really a discussion about the done deal. Those buildings are being built for, 1,700 kids? But it's just a fact now.
They're doing both simultaneously. They're building Franklin and Grant for 1,700, and they're also going ahead with the district-wide boundary review process.
But my question was, when they went out for the bond, was it at 1,700 the plan that they wanted to build it? It's just something that they revised, right? They said, oh, okay, these rich people that live over here are bitching, so let's, what, increase it? So we know what it's about. I mean, we all know what it's about. It's about their property value, not ours.
What is the building capacity of Madison? I don't know.
You said you're looking for.
What's the capacity? You want 1,350, but is that your capacity, or could you have?
Well, I mean, at one point, there were a lot more than that here. I'm not sure what the largest population ever was at Madison. I mean, somebody else might know that. I mean, we have 2,000 lockers, but. Well, it all depends on how buildings are used, because as time has evolved, you have partners within the building, they need space. You have, like once upon a time, way back in the day, Madison didn't have programs for English language learners. That takes classrooms. So sometimes when you have these additional programs that support students needing special education or students needing language services, those take additional rooms, and so that changes your capacity. Also, how many students you have in a classroom and how many periods you have in the schedule. So, I mean, right now, given the kind of programming we have, 2,000, we wouldn't be able to manage 2,000 students. But we would be able to manage 1,350, which, when the conversation was happening about, what should the high schools look like right now, that was the number that was used at that time.
I think for me, the basic disconnect is this. The district is saying that a high school needs to be 1,350, 1,400 to be sort of viable, sort of ideal. They anticipate growth at Grant, and so they're going to build for it. But the projections for Madison are that the population is going to stay static or even go down. Didn't that FT document say that? And so the logical question is, well, if they're planning for Madison staying the same size or smaller, below the optimal size. If the neighboring schools are overcrowded, why isn't there a simple shift of boundaries to peel some of those kids out? I mean, it seemed obvious.
I mean, I don't think it's both, right? I mean, it's not, I would assume that they would then, PSU is going to figure that out and part of what they're working on. I mean, it is an assumption, and I think that that's sort of what why we're here, is to make sure that somehow those boundaries get redrawn so that, I mean, if enrollment didn't go up, then the district just needs to keep focusing on, that is the goal, right?
Well,
That's what they say the goal.
That's the concern of increasing the capacity at Grant and Franklin, because then the assumption is they're going to have to feed that beast. So if they're changing the boundaries to not feed that beast, doesn't work, then why would they change it?
Build it that way and then have it.
I think Roosevelt might have the same
But I mean, maybe we could fit 1,600 in the building. That's why I asked. I mean, I don't know what the capacity is, but there's certainly plenty of children. It's just a matter of dividing them up.
The greatest fear from those of us who, have been with the district for a while, is that Grant will grow to its new capacity, siphoning students from Madison, and then Madison is 700 students, and then the district turns around and says, we need to poke another high school. So that's on the worst fear side. So we're here to make sure that our voice is heard, and that we're putting pressure on the district to say, there needs to be a high school in this spot.
And we need to have strong neighborhood schools that then want to come to Madison.
Right, and that there aren't just two strong neighborhood schools or four strong neighborhood schools, but there's strong.
Right. I mean, I'm on board with that whole thing, but, I guess we should be slightly hopeful that the PSU boundary review thing is actually going to be pretty significant. I don't know.
We are hopeful. Yes, sir. I understand people's fears that they want to close Madison, but I want to tell you that's not what it's about. It's about our kids not going into their school. They're afraid of black kids, they're afraid of brown, Latino kids, they're afraid of brown, Asian kids, and they think that our kids are going to pollute their kids. And how do I know? Because my daughter goes to schools over in those districts. I'm friends with many of those people, right? And their biggest concern is their children going to school with brown and black-skinned people. That's the problem with this district. That's the problem with Portland Public Schools, is that there's a terrifying feeling of people that are black and brown because there's not many of us here. They don't want our kids in their school. They will keep the school at 700 to prevent that from happening. And I thought that this whole let's not have transfers was supposed to equal things out, was supposed to take the wealth that was leaving and distribute it back to these neighborhoods. Also, when I went to the bond meeting, I did a lot of complaining about it. I thought these bonds were supposed to be every 6 years or something like that. Every school was going to be rebuilt. I went and complained because I said, if Madison's not on the first round, and then they said, well, our projections for the second round are these 3 schools, which wasn't Madison. So our projection that they've already gotten planned is us for the third round. You know what it's going to be by like 12 years from now, when people on the west side or people over in Grant neighborhood, the last bond to fix new schools, and it's all the poor people's schools, because that's who they're going to bundle it up with. They're not going to vote for it. And this is driving me mad because it seems like the tiger chasing its tail when we know what the problem is. The problem is black, brown-skinned people that no one wants in their schools, and this is the place for us. And so I really would hope that we will, do something to make sure that that doesn't happen. I understand that they're saying the writing's on the wall, but it's really frustrating for me because I'm tired of seeing the wealth, the cultural capital one that's over here, right? Because we have a lot of good parents that are engaged being siphoned off because they get opportunities to go to these other schools just for prestige or just in part because of perception. And I think you're right, there is a perception gap, and the school board is feeding into it. When they say, let's expand those schools by 1,700, that's feeding the perception gap. And I don't know what to do. It's making me, it's mind-numbing. Who are these people?
Well, I'm curious too, what you mean by they, those people.
Who do I mean by they and those people? I'll be completely honest. That will be willing to sacrifice us for their kids to be better. Yeah.
I just don't want to be one, I come from that neighborhood.
No.
I came here as to reach out to the community where my kids may potentially be going to high school.
No, completely. And
So I take offense to be lumped in that because I'm here as part of the community.
Yeah, me too. Be excited.
I was excited to know where I should invest my energy for my children. That's that's how I feel. I'm very comfortable where I'm at. We moved to that neighborhood to the school, and then all this came up and was like, you know, we just want to know where we invest our energy. And I think that's all.
But you realize there's something that we've done with Sherry.
Yes, but I still don't think that if you have come to our meetings, it's not about, we don't want brown people, black people.
I know.
I specifically didn't choose a private school, one, because I couldn't afford it, but two, because we want a diversity for our children. Granted, Grant doesn't have as much, I'm totally with you on that. But I don't think we should divide people and label them because it's exactly what you're frustrated with.
No, I'm not frustrated about that, because that's already happened. That's the reality. I am about calling it out. I'm tired of people not calling out the elephant in the room. The elephant in the room is color. The elephant in the room, particularly from Portland and education, is race. And I understand you might have a different perspective as well as this gentleman. I'm not trying to offend you. What I'm trying to suggest is my experience as a black man that has lived in this state, that has lived in Georgia, lived in North Carolina, lived in Indiana, lived in New Jersey, went to the #1 public high school in the state, top 5 public high schools in the nation, is this place doesn't invest in brown people. State of Oregon doesn't invest in brown people. And that's the problem.
Did you have a quick comment? Because
All I was just going to do is,
but not what we're here for tonight. Go ahead.
well, I'm just going to,
And it's
bounce
not
off of
offending, I'm sorry.
hers. We moved from my family moved from a whole different cluster right before the school started. And we were just, welcomed into Jason Lee with open arms. My wife had a medical condition. The whole neighborhood came together to help us. So I feel like we're in the right place, and I'm glad you guys are doing, this forum to get all the voices out. Let's keep it up.
I think one of the things is historically the district has applied their decision-making principles differently for different schools based on socioeconomic status. So, for example, one school, can say, you know what, that's too far away, we can't walk that far, that's not my neighborhood, don't send me there. Whereas kids up at Fabian or Vernon or Marshall, then suddenly, well, it's fine to have a 45-minute bus ride. And so we have seen arguments for maintaining boundaries or maintaining resources that are different than what's applied across the district. Same with crossing busy streets. Well, you know what? There's a lot of kids crossing Sandy and Northeast 33rd. There's a lot of kids crossing Barber Boulevard on the west side. But suddenly, if it means going from Alameda to Sabin, then Fremont's a problem. So we have definitely heard these arguments, and for those of us who have high school kids, we've been hearing these same arguments since our kids are third graders. And so it is sort of a fatigue that starts to set in after a while.
I do want to thank you very much, though, because I think there's a lot about class and race that is not directly discussed. And while we might not have time to get into all of it, I do think it absolutely needs to be acknowledged. So I appreciate it.
I would love if we maybe we could spend some time to talk about it.
Yeah, and I just want to, my purpose is not to derail it, my purpose is not to offend anyone. My purpose is, it's my job, it's what I do. I understand the history of race and wrapped up in historical context. It's not personal.
I keep thinking we're here also to celebrate the fact that Madison is raising 27 different flags and trying to create a community from 27 different nations or whatever. And that is the strength that we're trying to celebrate here and build on and continue to bring out into a more public face for the rest of the world to counteract those perceptions that have dogged the east side of 82nd Avenue since I moved here in 1989. Unsafe out here. And it's full.
Yeah, and that speaks to, thank you for that, and that speaks to this last one. All of us Madison parents are just so pleased to have our kids here. But we also recognize that we lose a lot of kids because of these misconceptions, really these outdated, I don't know if they were ever valid, misperceptions of the school. And we'd like a bit of help turning those perceptions around so that they more accurately reflect what's so great about this school. And I'm going to have to move this conversation along. The next hour or so, and I hope we fill up that time, I'd like to devote to hearing from the feeder schools, and
I don't know if you sort of position yourselves together, but I'm going to put this question to you, this basic question. What are your top 3 or 4 challenges as a school, and how are they related, if at all, to your school boundaries and to the topic of enrollment? Understanding, of course, that everything is related, you know, so it's hard to sort of pull something out and say, well, this is an enrollment issue, what have you. That's why we want to start with that question, what are their top 3, 4 challenges? But because we are ostensibly here to talk about the district-wide boundary review project, enrollment, we'll ask that you sort of couch it in that context, if at all possible. So with that, Roseway Heights, since there's so many of you here today, and you're first on the list. Can you, and maybe this gives the rest of you a chance to, did you have a question?
I didn't grow up in this town, so I only know where Jason Lee is and maybe where Roseway Heights is. It would be helpful if we had a map, but,
Oh, good.
Let's see if I can use my finger here. So, Rose City Park?
That's not there anymore.
It's so close. Roseway is right here. Jason Lee over here. You probably can't read them from where you are, can you? I'll point them out as we go, how about? So right now, Roseway Heights right here.
It's on, what, 73rd?
Right down the road. So, and I'll point each out as we go. So Roseway Heights, what's on?
Yeah. What's happening there and what's going to happen to Roseway Heights? Is it turn back into a middle school? You know, we are a really successful K-8.
Sorry to cut you off. Would you mind standing up and would you say a little bit more? Would you say a little bit more about the Rose City Park Beverly Cleary thing? Can you summarize that for us? Or can somebody?
I would be happy.
Please.
Okay, so Rose, do you want you to stand? Kelly McDonald. I have a sophomore here at Madison, and then I also have a 7th grader at Access, which is a program at currently at Rose City Park. I was there when Rose City Park closed. My kids both went there, and it was fairly painful time because, of course, it meant splitting up a wonderful school and community. Currently, after what I found really interesting is that no one talked to the community or anything when they decided to put Access at Rose City Park. Now, I'm a personal beneficiary, but it still ticked me off that there was no conversation at all about that. Obviously, you know, I think Access is a nice program, and I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad the space is being used. But it also would be nice, since it actually is in the Madison cluster, if it was actually a part of the, we were a part of the discussion as a whole. Currently, Beverly Cleary has gotten too big. It's at 2 campuses right now, and the district didn't really plan ahead, and now they've got, they don't have enough room. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to be sharing Rose City Park. 1st and 3rd graders for at least 1 year are going to be inhabiting Rose City Park as a 3rd campus, which has never been done in the school district before. And the question now is, you know, what happens? Is this going to be permanent or is this going to be temporary? How do you manage this 3-campus school? And so the question begs, you know, does Rose City Park reopen as a K-3 sharing Access, or does it open as a K-5 sending kids to some, maybe Beaumont? Does it open as a K-8?
you know, we don't know, and then move access out. So there's a lot of questions, there's a lot of people kind of maneuvering, but one of the things that bothers me, because I live on 59th, just a block and a half away from Rose City Park, is that, and I'm at Madison, and I have love it here, and it's been a wonderful school for my daughter, and I love the diversity. Some parents are saying, you know, we should have that still be a grant cluster school, but make it a neighborhood school. But the neighborhood would cut off at 57th, which is where Rose City Park is.
Covering volume.
Which would be weird, you know, because then, you know, anyone who maybe bought my house later on would not be able to go to their neighborhood school. So anyway, my point being is that this will definitely be kind of a contentious issue, I think. And but I would like, I certainly wouldn't want Grant's boundary to move into my neck of the woods, because I prefer my daughter to come here.
Well, and of course, we have this enrollment issue where we need those kids.
We do need the kids. So.
Why do we anticipate that only being a year or two? Are suddenly kids going to disappear?
Well, access is slated to grow more. So they're slated to grow.
They just don't know where they're going to go. They're just like, oh, we're going to put these Beverly Cleary kids here for a year, and then access is going to grow, and we don't know where they're going to go?
Right. I mean, there's no, that's part of this whole boundary discussion.
The other wild card is they're planning to use that building as a swing school when Faubion is rebuilt and some of the other elementary schools are rebuilt, that kids from those schools will be temporarily housed in those buildings. So I don't even know if access can stay and grow, or if they should reopen it as a neighborhood school, and maybe as a swing school for 2 years. It's a big mess right now.
Yeah.
I have two short questions. Where does access feed? I've always wondered where they go to high school.
It used to be that it fed into Grant, but it doesn't anymore. It just goes basic.
But where do those kids, can they go anywhere they want?
They go back
have
to
to
the
go to
neighborhood.
their neighborhood school. The other question was, is Roseway Heights still a relatively empty building? Wasn't it not that long ago?
No, we've been full.
Really?
Yeah, we've been limiting transfers for years.
Out of here, but Wriggler did their enrollment balancing. I'm from Wriggler, and when I looked at all the sheets only 2-3 years ago, it showed you guys that 68% capacity. Is that just a fabrication? I don't think it's enough.
All right, so let's get back to Roseway Heights. So we've got concerns about Rose City Park. What's next on your list of three to four items?
I agree whether it's, if there would be a change back to K-5 and go back to the middle school because it's set up as a middle school. That's what it came from. I think
what would happen?
Well, especially if they've taken away the elementary school that we would have gone to.
Right. Well, some of us
Yeah.
would go to Scott or, which is also busing and McKinney at
Right.
this point. So I think that's a big concern. You guys?
We also have the Vietnamese immersion
Yeah.
program, which was another one that was not
No
discussed with the
discussions.
community at all.
At all.
And they've been talking about it being a 1 to 2 year temporary solution.
Because it won't fit there after that.
Well,
Right.
if they shifted our boundaries, it would.
Right.
Right.
So we're nervous, I think we all have some concerns about how that's going to be handled and if there will be discussion.
Sorry, so what is the concern about Vietnamese immersion, that the
That they
school
may
doesn't have the
just
capacity for it?
arbitrarily decide that it will grow in place at Roseway Heights, and Roseway would then become the Vietnamese immersion school.
As
And
opposed to a
then-
So
neighborhood
it
school.
displaces non-immersion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think another thing too, kind of going back to what we were discussing about Rose City Park, is, as Mary said, we've been in this position before where we were in public discussions with the district and felt like our concerns were completely ignored. And so having these meetings is fabulous. I have to say that I personally am afraid that it's just going to be a checkbox for them to say, yep, we had public input, and then they're going to do whatever they want to anyway. So I'd like to feel more confident that our opinions and our concerns are going to be actually part of their solution.
Anyone else about Roseway Heights?
We're excited to come to Madison.
I've got 4 years, I can't wait.
I mean, I really like the K through 8, so I think that is the concern. If they change it, do they then go back to a K through 5? And also with the K through 8, that there be equal music opportunities. I mean, Beaumont has this amazing music program. So the middle schools and the K through 8, yeah, separate and not equal with some of the, I mean, our kids, I mean, we have kids that are at Grant, I mean, not me personally, but friends that kids have gone to Grant, gone to Madison, and they're doing extremely well, and says that Roseway Heights Junior High completely prepared them. And so I have no question about that, but it would be nice to have some of the arts. That's one thing, which is a little bit different than Madison, but I think it feeds into then the high schools having these amazing performing arts programs. If you don't have it in middle school, you're not going to have it in high school.
So without opening up a can of worms, by show of hands, who would like to see a return to middle schools, K through 5 middle schools? Who likes the K through 8s and likes that system?
Depends on the K through 8.
Yeah.
Because we go to Scott.
Yeah, if Roseway's Heights is done, I think Scott can put a big spotlight on why a K through 8 model is not working for every school within the district. So I don't want to cut you guys off, but
Well, we'll get there. So, if there's nothing further there, did you have another?
I was just going to say, I think there's no question to what Cindy was saying, is that the program that our middle school students are getting, as fabulous as the K-8 program is,
Right.
it is not equal to a middle school
It's not a proper
program.
middle school.
Exactly. Yeah.
You should see what Scott gets.
Fewer electives.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's just what I was gonna note, that we have a half an hour, I think, shorter school day than the middle schools. At least 2 middle schools that I know of, Beaumont and Mount Tabor.
So did you raise your hand pro middle school, or are you still a K through 8?
No, I like our K through 8, and partly because I have one kid in middle school and one kid in the younger grade, and it's very nice for parents. But I also had heard from someone from the last meeting that some of the K through 8 schools don't have science labs, and I think that's appalling.
Yeah, how does
that
Scott?
they don't have that opportunity.
As much as people complained about moving over to the Gregory Heights building, it was the best thing we could have done.
Roseway Heights?
Roseway Heights, yeah. I don't have a middle schooler, so, but I like the idea of K through 8, but I don't like the idea of other schools not getting the same as other schools. And so if it came to that choice of do we go back to K-5 so we have equity, that's what my vote would be.
I feel like I think Roseway is just doing such a phenomenal job, and I really love it there. But I feel like we won the lottery in the Madison cluster, and it feels a little unfair and inequitable that we have. Well, yes, and I know that, and it's I find that very painful, actually. And that's why I bring up the middle school issue, and I do think we lose a lot of students to other programs like Da Vinci that have middle schools because we don't have that in our cluster. So I also think that's a problem. And I like the K-8. There's definitely some advantages, but I would like to put PTS's feet to the fire. I want to know what has been the outcome of this. I want to see the numbers. I want to drill down. I want to find out what if they are even measuring the outcomes of this supposed success.
The K through 8 model?
Yeah.
Behaviors. I think both.
Maybe it would make sense to move on to Harvey Scott, since that came up.
Well, here's what, I'm awfully glad that Stephanie and Nicole are here, because they're a lot closer to the key issues that are surrounding Harvey Scott, because Harvey Scott is a dual immersion program that is Spanish-English, has some really unique issues. And, it's capacity, it's the neighborhood, it is the K through 8 thing, it is the whole show. So can you guys kind of?
we can. Yeah, I mean, Harvey Scott right now is about in the high 80s free and reduced lunch. It has at least 80% non-white. Most of those are Latino.
and we have a significant Somali population as well. Because we have such a big Latino population that lives in the neighborhood, most of it's associated with the Hacienda CDC, that's up there on Killingsworth and 42nd or so, I don't know. Because of those apartment buildings, which we are so grateful to have that affordable housing in our area, we can support 3 Spanish immersion, the Spanish side of the Spanish immersion program, 3 classrooms in an incoming kindergarten year. However, there is no way to then have that go all the way through K through 8. It's just not physically possible. And so because of that, and because frankly it is a very poor performing school, it is a focused school, meaning we perform poorly even compared to our Title I peers, people leave. There's a big huge group that usually leaves around 3rd grade, and then a huge group leaves around 6th grade. So
or they don't come at all.
Or they don't come at all. And so what that means is by 6th grade, we're seeing classes in about the 40s.
Well, we currently have more K1 students than we do 6, 7, and 8. And the numbers for the middle school projected for next year are 120 students total.
So what that means is not only is the school building was built as an elementary school and does not have, the labs or anything else that a Roseway Heights does, but it's even worse than that because there isn't even enough students in the projected for the incoming 6th grade year to do a rotational system. I mean, there's talk about making it one contained classroom. And our electives are things like
office and cafeteria.
So
seriously, it's not a joke. It's sad and it's disgusting and it's not fair to those kids. It's not a real middle school program.
Can you speak a little bit about, the capacity issue and how it affects, the Spanish immersion program?
Sure. So we've been presented with. I feel like this box is like I'm
you're not
short,
that
and I'm this.
Oh yeah, on that front.
The Spanish immersion program, frankly, is I think the community. It doesn't matter what your race is. It doesn't matter what your income is in our community. We all agree that the Spanish immersion program is the best thing that ever happened to Scott, bar none. I mean, there is no question that that's how the community feels. We're very divided about what's to become, though, because our Latino folks really like that K-8 model, in part because it's very difficult for them when they're living in poverty to get their kids to lots of different schools, and historically they've been shipped around a lot. We're part of that kind of area right on the border of Rigler and Vernon,
and when they tore down the middle school, then they
Whitaker,
were displaced.
and I mean, there's just a lot of history there, and so we understand that. The problem is that we've been told that we cannot have our 3 Spanish immersion classes next year because we don't have enough room. And therefore, we were given no transfers in for the English side, and we will only have 2, if that. I don't know. It's hard to know. And then there's just capacity issues in general, because there's a kind of a north-south divide in our school, and a lot of the more affluent. I mean, we're not affluent. It's not a rich neighborhood, but the more affluent parents end up trying to transfer elsewhere. I think 60 kids right now are at Roseway Heights, to be honest. That's our biggest feeder. And when they do that, they take capacity with them, and if anything, we need more capacity because everything that goes out from our school has to be translated, and the district charges us like 15 cents a word to translate it. And everything has to, we don't have capacity to raise money for library books, and we have, over 50% of our kids don't speak English at home, and we have a Spanish section that's, this big, one shelf. So this is what we're grappling with. So as much as we want the K-8 model, to summarize, the building doesn't handle it, and
the immersion program, that's the best thing that's happened to the school, is now in its third year going to
shrink down and contract.
It is a key program that is in danger of collapsing. It's going to implode.
So this is a classic example of what you were saying, where the needs of Harvey Scott, which has a growing, successful Spanish immersion program, these are highly sought after programs. People sign into the lottery all the time to get into a Spanish immersion program, and that program is being stopped.
Right.
When there is capacity in the Rose City Park building, Roseway Heights, maybe the Vestal building too, I don't know, but too bad for Harvey Scott. That's not fair.
Well, and the other reality is that, I mean, it's my neighborhood school, and I was delighted that there's an immersion program there. It made my life a lot easier because you can't get into another immersion program anywhere in the city. We also have a serious problem with administration, which is completely unrelated, but I mean, we're ready to go, and I have a kindergartner, and I'm ready to go anywhere else.
It's a turnaround school. There's only one teacher that's been there more than 4 years.
I did, and I have to say this, I don't know if it's relevant to all of you, but it certainly is part of my experience at Harvey Scott School. My other two kids went to Rose City Park because we only lived 2 blocks away, and then they closed it, but my third is in special ed. And the reason why I mention that is because my other two kids, we went to Winter Haven, which is a focus option, because I think girls don't get enough math and science. Special ed stepped in and said, no, you can't go there. And I said, well then, okay, I'll go to Rose City Park. No, it's not wheelchair accessible. Okay, I'll go to Roseway Heights. No, you can't go there. Those teachers are not qualified to teach your daughter. Okay, where can I go? Well, it sounds like you need to go to due process, which means hiring a lawyer, spending thousands of dollars. I did hire the lawyer, and they put me in Harvey Scott, which happens to be relatively close. It's only a couple miles away, so she couldn't go with her neighbor kids. She couldn't go to the one that's closest. She ended up at Harvey Scott, where they all speak Spanish, which is great, but they forget about special ed. And now it's a K-8, where she's in 5th grade. So next year, she's not going to go to Roseway Heights, which sounds terrific and is our local neighborhood school. She's not going to go to school with her sister at Winter Haven, where she did get accepted. Special ed said no. And now I find out she's also not going to go to Madison, even though we live here and we love it, and both her brother and sister go here. So while all of these discussions are very valid for the people who live here, special ed seems to be forgotten throughout the entire district. I know you're nodding your head too, because
I'm a teacher in Reynolds, I know.
I completely agree with your administration issue, because we are the forgotten few. So I want my daughter to go to Madison. I want my daughter to go to her local neighborhood school. I would even love it if she stayed at Scott for the next 3 years, but I don't have that option. So right now, I don't know where she's going to go next year. I would love it if they're talking about Beverly Cleary or Lentz or Bridal Mile. I don't know where she's going to go. So at least you guys have that option of staying in your cluster if you want to.
That's a good point.
Thanks, Joe. Can one of the Scott parents briefly connect the dots a little bit between the list of issues that you raised and what you hope, or if at all, how you hope this district-wide boundary review project can address some of these?
Well, we've been told that we have 3 options, let's see if I can get it right. And option number 1 is stay K-8, and possibly and take the immersion program down to only 2 kindergarten classes a year, and then a neighborhood class. Option number 2 is to keep it a K-8 and do that by shrinking the boundaries, I think. I don't know. It's not clear how it's going to work, because it's not really about, I mean, it's a boundary issue, but it's not, because you could shrink the southern boundary and you're not going to get that much, because those people are transferring out primarily to Roseway Heights, is my impression. Or the choice is to go to a K-5 model, and then where would our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders go? And that's a big concern. The obvious is to find some sort of economies of scale with Wriggler. But Wriggler's at Beaumont, and then Beaumont is a split feeder, and there's all this stuff that goes on with that. And so we don't know. What we do know is we really want to protect our Spanish immersion program. And, you know, I think if anything could happen, we would personally like to be able to build the K-8 out on our plot of land. Barring that, I think we're at the point where we want to see a robust K-8 option, whether it's at the school or at a different campus, but it needs to happen, and we need to get to the point where we can see our K-8 students having a real program and a real shot at coming to Madison and succeeding.
Because I think our school has the highest dropout rate at Madison.
And that's part of the issue. I mean, if you took a look at the data and really dug into the numbers, and I did this a while ago, and I'm not going to pretend that I can remember all of it now. But there was, you're right, there was like a 60-some-odd% dropout rate by the time kids who started in Scott got through Madison, right? It's not okay, right? So starting a program like this, that is an immersion program, that's actually drawing so many people from all neighborhoods, so much so that they have to turn them back, right? And take that away, right? You're asking parents with kids who not just go to school now, but don't know and are going to send their kids there in the future. You're going to drop them back down to that 60-some-odd%, where right now these kids actually got a shot at making it through. And I'm not a huge fan. I disagree a little bit with regard to K-8. I'm a big K-5 fan because I want to see the K-5 and I want to see an expansion of the immersion program. And when you talk about kids going, 60 kids from this neighborhood going to some other neighborhood schools, why is that? The reason why is because of the low-level achievement that has come from the perception and frankly, the reality, right, over the past years. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen? You've got two choices. Number one is you can continue to build a robust program that's going to continue to draw people in, not just from the outside neighborhoods that they're trying to get in now, but the local catch neighborhood right now. Those are the families and the kids that we're trying to draw into that school, in that neighborhood school. You're not going to do that if you drop back and dilute this program again. And you're not going to have a successful kid. You know, when 60% off, they got a 60% shot at not making it through Madison. Okay?
Where if we have a middle school option that could hold.
That's the key. In my mind, and I'm not smart about it, I'm not. But it seems pretty straightforward to somebody like me that if there's a stronger middle school program, a stronger middle school structure, infrastructure, that brought these kids from these K through 5, that they got it's a better program, And it's frustrating for me to be able to see other schools close down, other schools at super capacity. I mean, holy crap. There's got to be a better way, right? And it just ain't there.
Brief. Thank you.
I guess my question is, how do we make sure that this kind of information that we're learning about these schools get out to Portland? Because I get on these little Facebook groups, and granted, it is very, Beverly Cleary, this whole little group, but I'm not sure how many people understand what other schools are facing when they start making comments like, we need Rose City Park in our neighborhood to feed Grant, when there's really, really big problems, and there's whole communities that are having a hard time succeeding and being successful, that I tire of hearing those parents talk just about their needs when there's a lot bigger issues. And so how do we get this kind of information out to Portland at large so that we quit, when is Harvey Scott going to be rebuilt as opposed to Grant?
I don't even think it's an option. And the other problem our school has is it's a lack of student success. It's a failing school, and it also has terrible administration, and that's a huge other reason why people don't go there.
Well, but what is the point of these meetings?
These staff, they would support what is becoming a strong Spanish immersion program.
Instead of starting one and then taking away from it 2 years later.
It was very newsworthy, you know.
Well, I have an idea.
They get shut down.
Yeah, I have an idea for Monica's question, is that, you know, we have engaged our community. So we have a lot of parents who don't speak English, don't read, don't have email. I mean, so it's a challenge to engage. And I wish that they were here today, but they have, the people who've been heading this up both had some significant commitments. We have reached out, we have had over 100 parents come and take a DOT survey about what is important to us. 100 parents. We only have 500 kids in our school. And we've had 100 parents come and do that. And so when I'm expressing what our neighborhood says, it's based in some significant outreach. And we don't know. We are just running around in circles trying to get bare basics covered at our school. We don't have capacity to call up the Oregonian or whatever. But on the same hand, I think at this point, and maybe that's what banding together as a Madison cluster means, is that we do have more than just, you know, me, a white face up here talking about it. We have some pretty good data and some pretty good stories and some pretty a compelling case for why this should be about equity. And so I hope that we can all, as a Madison cluster, make that roll forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for that. Thank you for your point. We need to move on, and not to be glib about it, Monica, but to answer your question, it's up to you. It's up to everyone in this room, and as she just said, to do that. I want to move on to Jason Lee. Do we have a Jason Lee parent? Excellent.
This is the story of us and about 3 other families we know going with kindergartners going in, or what should be going to Jason Lee. We went into the raffle because honestly, with the logistics, it was difficult to get our daughter to Jason Lee. It'd be easier to walk her over to the school down the street. We were number 15 out of 10 spots, so we thought, okay, we'll make the best of it. We've loved it. We live less than a mile from the school. I think what we're dealing with, the challenge is it's on multiple levels. For instance, 92nd, which is what the school is on, most of 92nd doesn't have a sidewalk. So the big thing that comes to my mind is that little girl about 2 years ago that got ran over on 136th. She's a little blonde girl. My daughter's a little blonde girl. Last year, one of our dads got hit by a car walking his 2 boys home from school. And we were thankful that he got hit, not one of the boys, because it would have killed them. So at the beginning of the school year last year, we started a safety committee. Within a year, so the beginning of the school this year, we were walking the dangerous parts of 92nd with Steve Novick and about 5 of the engineers from Portland Department of Transportation. You couldn't have told me a year and a half ago when we started this that a year from then I'd be walking that stretch of road with the city commissioner who oversees the department and 5 of his people. And they said, you are on our radar, we just don't have the money. And we said, okay, you're on our radar, fine, we'll be satisfied with it. Yes. So that's a PDOT issue. 82nd, that's an ODOT issue. I mean, I no longer call this 82nd. I call this Oregon State 213. Okay. And thus, it's just a mess. Yeah, it's like a 7-layer dip. Just these little tiny things that just...
We've got some huge immersion with the Vietnamese.
Yeah.
We have a
and like
huge
when
Vietnamese community that goes to our school, and we celebrate everything. And then we're losing them to a Vietnamese immersion program somewhere else.
Why isn't it at the school where they go?
We already have.
I mean, we got
they're 1/6 of our population.
Yeah.
That neighborhood. Like they said there wasn't.
I've heard there's not rooms available, and that's why they're not going there.
Cafeteria as not only our auditorium, not only our music stage, everything. And, I mean, how often,
Well,
Sun School, I mean,
Yeah, we have Sun School staff that don't have rooms. We have Coach V, she does play work. She literally has a closet in the main hallway.
For
We
her
calls
office.
it a closet.
Yeah, closet, yeah.
So with what I don't think we have the option, at least we don't think we have the option of transferring, even if we wanted to another school. I think the problem with our neighborhood is the families that have the means, they just leave.
Yeah.
Either go to Vancouver, like we have one sphere of influence. We're the only family still in Portland. Everybody else is Vancouver, way west side, or out in Clackamas. And we hear it from family and friends probably every 2 to 3 weeks. You should move up here. You should move out here. So, yeah, there's a turnover of the families, but again, there's a lot of things going against it, and like all the parents that we know, they're doing the same thing we did. They put the kid names in a raffle. It almost seems like that's almost the rite of passage. That's what you do. You don't get in, and you make the best of it. And if you don't like it, you leave. You don't transfer. You don't, do to another school in town. You leave town. That's what I think is symptomatic of our neighborhood.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've loved it. The teachers, what?
We're hearing that the middle school is suffering at Scott. How is that?
I don't know. We've got young kids, so you know.
Yeah. With me, I have a kindergartner, but I volunteer a lot at the school. I mean, I have seasonal work, so I just spend as much time as I can in the school. I mean, they're doing good, but it's their lack of room. Same thing, I mean, you guys are running through. Same thing with Beverly Thirdly. I mean, I have nieces that are going to that school, and they're telling me, 5 kindergarten classes. I'm appalled. I don't remember this growing up. I remember the school was getting what they needed, and every kid getting what they needed. Didn't matter color, race, anything. The kids learned what they needed to learn. Wasn't for what I learned, I wouldn't be a chef right now, being able to support my family. I was lucky I didn't have to do the lottery. I just came into the school, filled out the application, bam, was accepted. We moved in the neighborhood, about a week before the Sun School program started in the summer. My little girl excelled. She went from an introvert to this blossoming young lady. Yeah, she's only 6, but she's growing up too fast for me.
Question for Jason Lee. I've always thought it really strange that folks who live like along Tillamook or like the Binford is in there, you guys have to cross both 82nd and 92nd to get to school. And those are both really busy streets. It always seems to me, not that you'd ever want this, I don't know, but that those folks living on this side of 82nd should be either Roseway Heights or Vestal.
Well, the last meeting that I attended in this room was 9 months ago, put on by dealing with the 82nd issue. So again, it's just a lot of different things that are piling up that are against the school. Yeah, 92nd, the street the school is on is unsafe.
Yeah, I don't.
So yeah, nobody walks 92nd.
I mean, I walk it to, I'm walking with not only my kid, a lot of times the neighborhood kids. And I am super strict. You stop at every corner.
Well,
and, it's gotten so bad. I mean, my little girl almost took a step out, and I grabbed her because there was a car that just blew through the neighborhood, using it as a shortcut to get up here to Halsey.
Yeah.
No. The stop sign,
There's
the only one,
but
Russell.
it's one. Well, and then another example, so we can get her on the bus, we have to piggyback on the fact that our younger child has cerebral palsy. And they were trying to tell us, oh, you need to walk this back street to get to school. And I was literally there with Steve Novick, who himself is familiar with physical disabilities. I said, well, in a couple of years, that's not going to work. My son has a brace. He's going to fall down the street. And he totally understood. I didn't even have to finish my sentence. He got it. But they just ended the conversation with, you're on our radar. We don't have $7 million. And I said, okay.
So I'm a Jason Lee parent as well. My kids, my daughter, she went to Alameda. She goes to Da Vinci right now. My son went to kindergarten first. He's in 2nd grade, and we are trying to transfer him out third grade, we're trying to get them out. I'm trying to get them out because, once again, I'm gonna bring race back into this, right? The issue is it's 85% free to reduce lunch. You guys are solely focused on these poor kids' schools on, hey, we gotta get these kids prepared and prepped. We gotta isolate them early, interventions, regardless of kind of identifying students individually. And quite frankly, the first 3 years experience of kindergarten and first grade, rather, were excellent at Jason Lake. I totally enjoyed it. My son has been crushed this year, crushed by this absurd idea that a 7th grader should be able to meet some obscure metrics that if he can't meet them at 7 years old are going to impact his entire life without anyone understanding cultural capacity and cultural capital. And that's what this is about. People don't understand the people that they are teaching, the communities that they are with. And the tag on the 92nd thing, I drive my son to school every day on 92nd, and then I follow that to 84 to commute down.
Just to see one parent becoming involved. They're, the teachers have said they've seen a 15% across the board jump in learning, grades coming up. Now more parents are getting involved. We got a small PTA, but we're pretty strong, but it's, just everybody's doing little bits. And we're coming across that, just the cultural divide because it's the language barriers.
Scott, sorry to cut you off. Can you quickly connect the dots for us again? Excuse me. Back to this district-wide band review project. And if you're not able to, that's fine too. But can you see any direct potential impact benefit that it might have on you?
Again, it makes no sense that if there's going to be a Vietnam immersion program, we already have one.
Yeah.
It's 1/6 of our population. One of the good things about Lee, when we were studying about it, was the smallest articles in the Metro section was about how the school district was experimenting with the menus. And they chose Lee because Lee had an equal amount of all the different minority groups.
Ethnicities, all ethnicities.
And so if one kid wasn't going to like something,
They have another option.
some other kid's going to like it. Like, I eat this all the time. So, we already throw big things with these communities. It doesn't make any sense not to have it here. So.
We felt the same way at Rose Waves, because when they came and talked to us, they said that you guys are one of the biggest populations.
Yes.
Even those
So it didn't make sense
figure
to
out
come
way
to our school.
So I'm trying to figure out to learn Vietnamese and Cantonese
Yeah.
to be able to talk to them. Because I speak so many different languages.
I'm sorry?
Boundary related, I don't know why we have that little nook over here on the other side of 82nd. That's my concern.
But again, it's
Safety.
just things, it's beyond this room. We've already talked about it with PDOT, ODOT, and it's just, even right now, we're missing the neighborhood association meeting. It's going on down the street. And we had to choose, do we go to this or do we go to that?
Thank you for doing
Well, we did split a lot of people to make sure.
Yeah, we have more people here.
Yeah.
I have a question about your applicant for the Vietnamese immersion program. Has anyone from the immersion office come to Lee and talked to you about could this work to be here?
Nope.
Okay, I know that right now it can't be, but if the boundaries got redrawn and your current neighborhood size was shrunk, would you want that to have a Vietnamese immersion program placed in your school? That's a question to talk at your PTA. If you want it, go talk to the people at the immersion.
Well, that's something we can bring up at the next meeting. But we haven't been approached by it at all. And well, true, we could also have it here at Madison. Yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm sorry, I was kind of thrown to the wolves. My wife usually does stuff like this. So she told me to go, and it's like, okay, I'm taking notes. So
Let's move on to. Do we have any Vestal parents here? No Vestal parents? What about? I know we have one. Creative science parents. One. How about you? Top three issues, concerns, and how, if at all, do they relate to boundaries and involvement?
I'll do my best to answer.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared to represent the school when I came. I thought this was information on the boundaries. I thought, what, they're redoing the boundaries? Creative science is in a growth phase right now. It's a very small, fairly small focus option school. We're hoping in the next 2 years to be at capacity. It's K through 8. Our mid-level program is a blended program. We currently have about 79 children. Next year will be the second year where 2 classes of 5th grade will move up into 6th grade. So there's from 6th grade down 2 classes per grade. 7th and 8th is one of each. So it's projected in 2 years we will be at capacity. And like most of the other K through 8 that we've heard from this evening, the mid-level program does not have the bells and whistles. And a big part of that is the physical space that we have. We're in the old Clark Elementary building, which was an elementary building. The second issue is numbers and staffing, because the program is still growing. We don't have the faculty to offer a lot of the things that other middle schools have. Having said that, they're doing a fabulous job. I can't say enough good things about what my son is experiencing right now as a 6th grader. It's not really a feeder school into the Madison draw. It's because it's a focus option, they get kids from all over the city. And then those kids go off to their neighborhood high school. But I live in the neighborhood here, so when my son moves up in 2 years, we'll be coming to Madison. Predominantly, the students from that school will be going to Franklin. There's a handful. Out of the 6th grade, my son is the only kid that will come to Madison. Wow. My daughter's 3rd grade class, there's 5 kids. Every year there seem to be a little more people from North and Northeast Portland coming in, but predominantly it's kids who move on to Franklin. It's on Southeast 92nd Avenue at about Main and Hawthorne, so just south of the outer boundary.
Thank you. Good job, Dan.
Jody?
I just wanted to add a comment about the other focus option schools. So my daughter goes to Winter Haven, which is the focus option, and it's the same thing. She's the only one that's going to go from Winter Haven to Madison. And my son is a senior now at Madison, and he says he loves it. Same thing. He's the only one in his entire 8th grade class to come back to Madison, which is really sad. So I guess if we were to look at enrollment issues too, I would encourage somebody to look at all the focus option schools and see whether or not that changes the catchment. I mean, we're thrilled that we came back to Madison, but those focus options, I don't know how they're populated, or if that affects the boundary decision at all.
I don't know if I addressed all. It's kind of lost my train of thought.
Was this the first, aside from maybe the invitation, was this the first you'd heard, and I should have asked this question to everybody, is this the first you've heard about the district-wide boundary review project?
No, I've been aware of the review process, and the information about moving tonight didn't come through my school. It came from another parent in the community. So I don't think any other parents at Creative Science were aware that there was a meeting tonight. But there is such a small number of us who will come into Madison.
Well, thank you. Anyone here from Fabian or Vernon? Sorry?
Harrison Park's in the house.
Harrison Park.
My name is Carrie Riggs. I'm the Sunside Director at Harrison Park, and Shannon Cooper, long-term special ed instructor at Harrison Park. I know one of the first people I ran into this evening in the cafeteria said, "Harrison Park, what is that?" And that sort of encapsulates Harrison Park. We have had struggles with identity crises over the last several years. With that said, we are an amazing school. We have so much to offer. We're incredibly diverse, and we celebrate
about that though, like living
It kind of
residents or
speaks
something?
to what was said earlier, you go to these meetings, you're putting in a lot of time, but they've already made their decision, but they have to be polite. So I kind of think it was that. It was just like the move when they displaced 500 students from Clark, and we were recognized by the state. We were doing a really pretty good job with our kids. And, our parents don't have a voice. And so we were moved to Benn Street, becoming K-8, which is a cool idea. And but there was Kellogg not too far away that could have been creative science. But I always kind of felt it's nice, easy access on and off, whereas on the freeway with creative science. So anyway, 500 kids moved to Harrison Park. We are not a focus school. We do well. Sometimes we wish we were a focus school just because they get more resources. We're in between.
No, you don't.
Well, there's things we don't have. We don't have textbooks, we don't have desks enough, Well, having helped the teacher that puts a desk out in the hallway to have, say, a volunteer to read, a book to a child because that desk goes away because somebody else needs a desk for a child.
We are over capacity in our school. In fact, Shannon can attest to this past summer, the district came out, put up drywall, the old locker rooms. So now we have students or special ed students or English language learners learning inside locker rooms.
And mine is not the most challenging environment. I say mine's fourth from the bottom. There's one classroom that's in the active kiln room. There's another classroom in the drying kiln room. Title I program is in the boys' locker room, and because of ventilation, we're hearing every minute, 20 minutes. And these locker rooms had not been used for over 20 years. I was thinking 14, but someone said no, 20. So these urinals on top of it had this orange triangle rusting, so they're not attractive. So I got the girls' locker room, so I'm pretty good.
And so our school, we are, and I don't know if you want to point your handy map, because we're the school that extends the boundaries so long. We're 5 miles south of here. And so for our wonderful students, we have way down there, just north of Division, on 87th, and we have amazing students, and we have a lot of students with challenges. So when they graduate from Harrison Park, and we're so proud, and now instead of saying go to Marshall, which is just down the street where most of you live, and you can walk there, good luck getting on that TriMet bus to go 5 miles north to get to a really big school where we don't have a connection, where we don't feel like we're in the community. And we've been working closely with Madison, especially this year, with the athletic department, with counselors have been working to really try and integrate so that we can create this feeling of community. But our families and our parents, and we just have difficulty communicating about a lot of issues, and there's language barriers, and there's a lot of
our parents are working 3 jobs even, minimum wage to keep things going.
So that's an issue for us. For us, we want to have a neighborhood school. We know our students are going to have a better chance of getting there, and being able to stay and to stay later and participate in that, after school programs and all of that.
So, we're hearing from the high school parents about the discus. Because I know that after school activities and teaching activities, we don't, we love to have you guys do a little movie, but I'm just kind of wondering, were you okay with going to Madison? I'm sure the closure of Marshall was heartbreaking.
And the kids are going to Franklin, or Splitty.
But Franklin has said, thank you, but we're full. So you really do
Well,
need
and
to
they
go
are.
to that. And they are full. And I feel like there are parents that are, to really have their information and our access their students are going to Benson. In the outlying schools, a lot of our students were not necessarily hearing the feedback. So I know the kids that would play out sports in the middle school program can't make it happen here. It's difficult.
Well, this is another problem as we go to level 6A, and we need more students, and we couldn't field a freshman baseball team this year, so how do you move people in the program? Well, if I lived down there, I could imagine one thought I would have, like, well, as long as I have to travel that part of Madison, why not go to Benson? But that's kind of one way we've assumed, and we could be wrong, but we've kind of surmised if that is one thing that pulls people away from Madison, because they're already traveling, why not go to Madison and those classes?
So we know what great opportunities everybody else. Yeah. Ah, okay.
Well, so, and that's also just an interesting part, and that brings up just one of the challenges that we face as a school, a big safety issue as well. So we're on 87th, and we're 2 blocks, we're very busy school, we're 2 blocks from the division, and when the elementary school students, when we became that K-8, the drop-off and pickup just became a nightmare, and it is still to this day, it's a nightmare, and there was a lot of advocacy for the district and for our public transportation, to fix the street and to stoplight, we don't even have sidewalks on the east side of our school because they're mostly rental properties, and so they haven't been able to, and if you own the property, you have to pay for the sidewalks. So we don't even have white paint.
Some of our streets don't have pavement, they're just potholes.
I've said so many times in the middle of the night, I'm just going to come and spray paint a crosswalk because you can't have crosswalks if you don't have crosswalks. So that's a safety issue. Thankfully, like Transportation Alliance and their bike advocacy program really fought to get that light. So now there is a light on 87th and Division, but that had nothing to do with PTS. That had to do for the cyclists that wanted to have a safe crossing for a north-south corridor. But I'll tell you what, it has really changed our drop-off and pickup.
Well, so, honestly, maybe we're going to have to cycle.
I know.
Did you have something on Harrison Park?
Well, no, I was just thinking about the distance. I mean, it's only tangentially related. But and I noticed there's nobody here from Fabian and Vernon. Do you get very many people that are traveling, do you even know, that are coming from Fabian and Vernon? Because they can also go to Jefferson.
We do have Southern students that come, but it is far away.
It looks like it's about as far as Jefferson Park.
When I called the district, they only had available last year's number, I think, and it's almost 27.
From both of them?
Yeah.
Together.
27 from the dual assigned Jefferson cluster. We think a lot of them are using addresses to bring.
Well, a lot of people
Because
do that.
Jefferson's enrollment is and ours isn't, so where are they going?
So Harrison Park,
But I
parents.
think still go because I'm thinking of the last school last year. So
Yeah, let's just wrap up real quick. Any explicit ties to reassessing boundaries?
Well, that would solve that over enrollment issue.
Right, and we have about 275 8th graders right now, so our middle school is heavy within our school. It's big for 8th grade crew. I think next year it will be less than that coming here, but we want to make it accessible, and students have a lot of challenges that they face every day, so let's just give them school where they can make it every day. Heavy, so.
So, just, have you guys thought about trying to get, but when their new school is built, would that be a better, do you think that would be an easier go for you guys?
And a lot of our families live closer to Franklin, so
Yeah.
they've just been pushed out of that. So, and Harrison Park is amazing, and there are a lot of really great things that are happening in the school for our students.
Magic happens within the
So for our students to come here, it will really enhance Madison, so it could be a really good
We
fit.
have a lot of talented kids, despite the fact that though our ESL population is a whole different issue, we're in our second year, does not get at all for the entire year PE, music, or computers and art.
So they're in a self-contained program.
No, well, I mean, when the kids are walking down the halls, the ones who are not receiving ESL services get to go to art, the others take the turn and walk into
More academic.
More academic.
And that's just not Harrison Park, that's a district-wide.
Yeah. It's not right.
But it's not right.
And the kids, I've known these kids for a long time. They do remarkably well from the simple fact they don't get to explore the things that they can do well. Especially, when we have newcomers, maybe it's art or music that they really can excel in, and that can be a basis for their vocabulary building. They don't get that opportunity. So we've got a lot of great little troopers that are just, working through the day with not really a break, because even recess is short and lunch. Because we have 3 shifts every day. So anyway, thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
Before I talk about regular, though, I wanted to introduce email from me, that's who I am. My last name is Arntz, but my other last name is Knott, and I think my email comes from Knott. So if you see it's something from Michelle Knott, that's me. Anyway, so I guess this is really good because I'm going to try and be really positive because it's just overwhelming. All this stuff is really overwhelming to me. It's just really upsetting. So, Wrigler has a lot of all the same stuff that all of you have had, except that we did enrollment balancing 2 years ago. So we're not overcrowded. We are a focused school. We have a 87% free-reduced lunch. We're a lot like Scott, except we were like Scott years ago. We're not like Scott is now. We're K-5. We were crowded. We got immersion. I think immersion is going to start high school here next year, so it's pretty set and developed. And there's all those issues, but I think that we have progressed through a lot of them, and we're doing really well. So I think that's positive, but a lot of that has to do with that we're not overcrowded anymore, which was really painful. We're not a K-8 anymore, which was really painful. Like a self-contained classroom in 6th grade or 7th grade or 8th grade, we had those. It's just not okay. It's not age appropriate, it's not academically appropriate, it's just not okay. And so we don't have that anymore because our kids are going to Beaumont, right? Which is fabulous. And so I guess that's one good thing that the district has done in the last couple of years was make that decision, because there was the idea that maybe we should go to Vernon, which I found unacceptable. And we didn't. And we're going to Beaumont, and I'm really sorry that it's the only middle school and that it's not even available to anybody else in the cluster. So, it's messed up. It's what it is. But we have the immersion program is great for our population, and we get about 70% of the kids, public school kids in our neighborhood come, so we get a pretty high capture rate. And people who go there like it, and a lot of people choose not to go there too, and that's their loss, I think. It's hard to sell your school, and it's really hard to sell your school when you are overcrowded. Like, it was really hard for a long time. I didn't advertise to anybody I knew because I was like, no, we don't want any more people. Like, if you had those 60 people from Roseway Heights, would that really be good? Yeah. Probably, because they are of a higher socioeconomic. They would blend, so you have a lot of diversity, but you don't have a lot of we just don't have a lot of economic diversity. And you were saying about that capital. I volunteer in the classroom and I read to kids, and I'm the only one, right? And you need that. There has to be a way to blend, to have more buy-in. And you were asked how people can know about it. I think people know about it. That's why they don't go. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People think they know when they don't really know, and then they don't go.
But they just care.
They don't care. And one of the things is, I care, right? We care, and that's great, but I think I've sort of realized that when you're in this child rearing phase, you don't care about other people. You're there to you gotta figure out what's best for your kid. And there's a
district that cares about it.
Yeah.
Before we leave, I know we have some district people here. I would like to at least hear that they heard what was said and that they're going to take it somewhere.
They know.
That something. Well, I'd like to hear it again.
Well,
I'd like to hear what was
I think that
just get the common right notes.
I think Judy wanted to maybe, I don't know.
Before we do that, can you tell us any hopes and fears that you have that are specifically related to the boundary review project?
So I hope that we don't have to do it again. I don't really look forward to the whole process. I went to a Scott meeting and I gave them some advice, and everybody wants to, I guess my
what struck me at the end of the process, which was long, time-consuming, and like just relentless from my perspective, was that at the end there's a spreadsheet, and it's got all the stakeholders and all the different factors and all the different cells, and I'm like one half of one part of one cell. And that was when it only involved 3 schools, or 3 schools, 5, whatever it was. Some, you know, it was Alameda, it was Sabin, it was Vernon, and it was Rigler, and it was another one. Irvington. Right, so there's, you know, right, 6 schools, all these different things you have to think about, one of which is parents, you know, and what they think. And it comes down to a pretty minute little bit of input. And so, you know, now it's all the schools in the whole district. I don't know. But I think that you still have to do it. You have to have the process, and you have to give your opinion, and you have to make it extremely clear, and you have to be really patient, and all those things. But it's going to happen, right? So I think that's good. I mean, I think it has to happen. If that means that Rigler's boundary changes, I hope I'm grandfathered in to do whatever it is I'm supposed to be doing, because I don't want to change, right? I mean, I like now what I have. You all want to change, so whatever. I hope that I can't see how it's all going to not play out.
So one of our concerns as far as building Madison's enrollment is that the number of dual feeders and split feeders, when you get to those schools, you know, do you find that they're starting to identify as grant? Because it's the grant cluster parents that are volunteering at Beaumont. It's the grant
Well,
cluster.
we don't have the option of going to grant.
But are people wanting to?
Oh, yeah.
Friends
Oh,
that
yeah.
wanting to
It's
follow
already
their
happening
team?
at Beaumont. The 8th graders right now,
Right.
but according to what I've heard, are from Rigler, are applying to the lottery and trying to get to grant. And they're, you know, I'm sure they've got all kinds of reasons and excuses and hardships and whatever it is they need to come up with. Not all of them, but, you know, this is what I've heard from the people I know who have gone there, is that it's a big thing. Well, Madison went to Beaumont and gave a presentation, and Grant went to Beaumont and gave a presentation, and all of the 8th graders could see the presentation, except they couldn't actually make a choice. And then I think they were maybe led to believe that they could make a choice, and so they're trying to go to Grant because the Grant presentation was better than the Madison presentation for whatever reasons, is what I heard. So, you know, those things happen. There's all kinds of ways that people get their perception and their interpretation and whatever, you know, it's a bigger school.
That's one option in the Madison cluster to preserve the community identity and income.
Well, I think it's at least decent to have that option in the cluster when there isn't one and everybody else has that option.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I think it's at least a decent option. I personally went with my daughter's gut reaction from 2nd grade, which was, I will not go to middle school here. She was like, yeah, I mean, she saw the behavior of the middle school population, because a lot of people leave and you get left with the kids that aren't supported at home or whatever, and then they're the role models for the younger kids. And my daughter was like, no, I'm not going to go to middle school at this school, Mommy. And I was like, you know what, maybe you won't, because maybe it'll change. But if I was at Scott School looking at going to middle school there, and they told me it was going to be self-contained, I don't think I would. I mean, I can speak to that real quick. I know we're out of time, but the last 3 years, the 8th grading class coming out of Scott, presumably to Madison, our African American students, 100%, like 88% and 100% have not met, are not meeting math standards when they leave our school. They're up against a stacked deck, you know. When you leave an 8th grade program that's just been siphoned off for, 9 years, you are left with a group of kids that just have a lot of challenges, and I can't imagine walking into high school with that many challenges and getting through. And so that's the other part of the kind of the K-8 middle school. I mean, it's not even really about anymore, in my mind, about what is best for kids socially or this or that, whatever. It's what do we have to do to get these kids into a situation where they can come to Madison and excel.
And survive.
Thank you, Michelle. One thing, I'm going to use historical perspective. In 1954, Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren said segregation of children solely based on race creates a badge of inferiority. We don't have segregation on race. It's segregation economically. Statistically, our schools are more segregated now than they were when legal segregation was de jure. And it's a badge of inferiority that these kids face. They see their friends leave, they see the people with wealth leave, and they feel what? That they can't perform, just like people with handicaps. That we used to isolate them back in the 70s. I was talking to my students about this yesterday. The ADA Act, one of my favorite things. We used to isolate them, believing, oh, they'll be able to learn. It's a badge of inferiority. It was stated by the Supreme Court Justice. It's historical. It's the fact. And when you ignore that, when you ignore history, when you try to put the blinders on it and think that these people are well-meaning, that as you said, people are looking out for their own kids, and I understand why they're doing that. I completely understand why they're doing that, but this is a community, right? We live in a community together. If we want to prosper, if we want Portland to do it, the district needs to balance out races and class and ethnicity. They need to come up with a mechanism to stop the cultural capital from fleeing the poor performing schools. We need to uplift these kids. We need to give them the confidence that they can compete in this competitive world. And when we isolate them, we don't give them money, and when we allow people to leave, and we allow their friends to go to another school, it makes them angry. It makes them inferior.
It's Portlanders create this problem for themselves. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just the school district's fault.
I have to say, though, I've lived in this neighborhood for 16 years now, and the perception of Madison is changing. Now, occasionally people from, I don't know, the west side will be like, oh, how's it going? When you're trying. Now that I've been here for almost 2 full years, like now when people like freak about Madison, oh, I don't know, it's on 82nd, or I don't know about this, oh, they're going to do this, I just kind of want to laugh because now like that perception really takes on an absurd quality once you're actually part of the community and the teachers and
So you gotta get people in the door. Yeah. Like I got in the door of my school because they had a language immersion program. And I live a block and a half away. You gotta get people in the door. There's people in my neighborhood who would not walk in the door.
So here's the thing. So it sounds like 2 things are overlapping, that we're all, both Madison and the feeders are in the situation that in order to develop the programs, we need to get the people in. In order to get the people in, we need to develop the programs. So that's the dilemma. So here's the thing. We don't need to get the people in. The district needs to get them in. The problem being, we're all afraid, or I'm hearing this thread of fear that there's already a foregone conclusion. That we're going through this exercise so that somebody can say that they got input and that, the design has already been drafted. So, just one more quick thing, and just in answer to what somebody said, what do we do? I think one thing we need to do is, whether it's one of us or whether it's 10 of us, for single board meeting that happens from now until this decision is announced, we need to be on that agenda. We need to be at the table, and we need to be saying it, whether it's an exercise in futility, I don't know, but we need to be numbering.
Right, I write letters to the school board every other month.
And a letter is great, but when it's coming out of your mouth and they see your face, it's a little bit
And numbers. It's and numbers.
Well, and also just from our particular community, the fact that we need to say, okay, we're paying attention now.
Right. Well, we had a tremendous turnout for our community outreach for our homeless housing, and Judy and I were talking about it earlier. It was because we did it as a community. So they're not going to do it for you. Right. Like they can't build their community ability. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's ways to do that. I don't know. I think not having middle school and not having focus options. Yeah, they don't have a crazy. That doesn't help. You're right. But in terms of getting people out who are at your school to say what it is that your problems are, and maybe they know what all the problems are already, but I think historically the way it worked is that parent voice was very, very powerful, but the only parent voice was the rich white voice. And how you change that, I don't know. The district doesn't do a whole lot of engagement with in other languages.
Well, when they charge you 15 cents a word to translate and you you go to an immersion school, it's semi-absurd.
Our people at our school do the translating for us. We don't get the translate. We just
Our teachers are so overworked and so overwhelmed that it's just.
As far as this perception thing, I mean, I think the biggest thing that the message that I'd say is a takeaway for anybody from the school district here is that number one is that there is a foregone impression. I mean, I've got to tell you, there's administrative people at our school who has said point blank that the district is going to do what they're going to do, and a lot of this is just kind of, you give your input and so forth, but the district will change the boundaries as they say fit, okay? So you got a job to change that, because people need to not just feel like they're participating and make a difference. They have to know that they're making a difference. So that's the takeaway.
Larry, do you care to respond to that? Are you Larry?
Larry? I want to give you a fair chance to tell us.
I'm not trying to be combative here or anything. I'm not even trying to put you on the spot. I'm telling you what your own administrative people have told my wife today. Okay?
Well, listen, after all, we're here largely because of an initiative on their part, and we're sort of prompted to bring people together. So, just briefly, did you want to say, we need to wrap things up. Did you want to say anything along those lines? The skepticism about what the community input, or how it will be used, whether it will be used.
Well, I would also ask, maybe Judy would want to weigh in, to update the status of the partnership with PSU, and that is currently, they're in the assessing these sort of questions phase right now. So one of the things that I think that my understanding they're working at is looking at how to go deep with community engagement when it gets to the phase where, I think as you mentioned, they've met with some of the Madison cluster folks. I think they're in the process now of meeting with stakeholders as they're trying to assess who PTS is, who the community is, who, as Michelle said, Portland is, and where people stand on all the many issues involving boundaries.
I guess if I could just say, thank you for the opportunity to listen. We didn't come here to spy. Everything that you said validates why this is an important process, a really hard process, and the district, whoever we are, can't just do it alone. I applaud you for taking your time to come together across, to sort of step out of what is your school and look at other people nearby and define commonalities. I think that's really hard, and it doesn't happen much. I really applaud Scott's school. They're doing some awesome things within their community. What we did at Wriggler was largely community-led, right? I mean, we knew we had a problem. We knew that we were part of the problem, and it was parent voices who said, look, if you want this to work in our community, here's what we need, here's how we want to do it. And we said, okay, we'll pay for the interpreters, and we'll pay for the babysitters, and but, you know, and that's how it works. And not everybody gets the results they want. I have no idea what the outcome of any of this is going to be. So if you all think we have a plan, would you tell me what the plan is that you think we have? Because maybe that's it. I, honest to God, don't know how any of this is going to work out. I know we have a boatload of problems that have to do with enrollment, but the bigger thing is we need to do a better job with every kid. And there's a lot of families who aren't here who would say that to us as well. And enrollment is sometimes a part of it, but a lot of times it is a distraction and a detour away from where the real heart of it is, which is better teaching and learning for all of our kids. And parents matter, and we don't want to distract from you all like getting to know each other and finding what you have in common. When it's time to do this thing, I am excited to know that Madison Cluster is going to show up in a big way. I don't want to just do this with 2 or 3 communities who maybe more feel more empowered to be a part of it. I really do want this to be a district-wide process, and that's why I was really glad that you were putting this together. Brian, thank you for letting us come and listen in. We are not even started, really, so to say we already know how this is going to end is beyond my expectations. I understand why you might, I understand why you feel that way. If you have a chance to work together and keep talking with us, letting us work together with you, we would be very grateful.
Thank you. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's really nice to be under one roof with you all in what is hopefully just the first of many meetings. There is a sign-up sheet going around. It's a tablet. Please put your name on it, because this is the beginning of the Madison Cluster email list. And anything and everything that we send out after this will go out to that list along with the larger Madison PTA MADparents list that we already have. So please put your name on that. I would ask you too, briefly, to take what you've heard tonight, go back to your parent peers, your PTAs, and do 2 things if you would. Get back to me, to Madison PTA with any additional input that you may have overlooked or think of later. And also, to a lot of your points, organize yourselves and organize your respective lobbying efforts. This process is going to be going on for a lot of months, a year and a half. And if you want the district to know where you stand, then you need to speak up often and loudly. We will be transcribing minutes. Thank you, Aaron, for filming all this. We'll be transcribing minutes, and we'll make those available. The video as well, we can get it. To you. Awesome, and we'll post it on the Madison site.
Brian?
Yes?
I'm bringing around the sign-in for anybody who didn't sign in. If you want to be contacted for further meetings or whatever, please make sure you give us your info.
Thank you. Speaking of further meetings, the next Madison, yes, Joy?
It's too early to join the Madison PTSA.
So the next meeting is Monday, April 14th. You are all welcome. And our distinguished guest that night will be Judy Brennan, and we can dig a little deeper into this DW, whatever, district-wide banner review project. And fire away questions and dig into that a little bit. The Madison, sort of the core Madison or MADparents group, one of the things we're going to do now is we're going to go away and try to synthesize everything we've heard and try to determine the degree to which we can represent to the PSU team, to PPS, the Madison cluster as a whole, versus how much we need to recommend to the PSU team that they really need to interface with these K through 8s, because there's this whole set of concerns and agendas that we just, maybe too much for us to handle. So that's something that we want to get a handle on, is the Mad Parents Group. And that's about it. Does anyone else have anything else that they, yes, you have one point.
I have a question. When does PSU give their information to PBS?
Good question.
PBS going to listen to the information that PSU has gathered?
And Judy, since this is outdated, do you want to, right now we're looking at, according to the original schedule, we're looking at summer. Are we still out there?
Well, we'll have an update from them sometime this month. We expect that by May, we'll have something that will, like, they'll probably come and do a presentation to the board at a time when it's really widely available what their recommendations are for the whole country. So you should see something within the coming weeks about, so their first phase of work is wrapped.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody, very much for coming. And we have one more announcement.
One more thing, our wonderful principal, Petra, celebrated a birthday yesterday. And you know, a lot of this wouldn't be happening if it weren't for you. I think you're a wonderful leader, and you've really brought a lot of us together to start discussing these issues, and I really appreciate you. And if anyone wants to hang out for a few more minutes, there's cake over there.
We have cake at all of these.